we feeling? How are the energy levels here? How are we going? All right. Well, I'm certainly extremely inspired after what an amazing day. I mean, Renata, she always puts on a show, right? We know we can always expect the best from her and her team. But I'm really excited about today's session. We heard earlier today about what an incredible legacy the '94 World Cup left after being hosted here. Obviously, the birth of Major League Soccer, the incredible work that the US Soccer Foundation is still doing today. You obviously heard about all that. The 2026 Men's World Cup being hosted here in Canada and Mexico is gonna look a little bit different, right? It's gonna look a lot different from '94. Obviously, the soccer landscape is incredibly different, but it's also gonna look a little different from the previous few World Cups. This is gonna be my 4th World Cup that I've been working on. And it's gonna be really different because it's very city-led. In the United States, we have 11 host cities, and all of those host committees are really committed to not only pulling off the best event they can, but really looking at how it is gonna make an impact on their city. And as a result, it's really driving a legacy that is very, very locally led, and what this looks like from a community level. And that's really interesting for us at US Soccer, because we're obviously looking at the national legacy and what this means for the sport. But in terms of how we approach it, we're looking at how we do this really locally and with local partners, because this is gonna look so different. So for us, we wanna see access for everyone and inclusivity for everyone in this country in the game as a legacy of this World Cup. And we know we can only do that if we're showing up truly, authentically, locally. So I'm so excited about this panel because we're gonna hear from some true experts and some organizations that are dedicated to local impact and learn about how they're utilizing what's coming this summer to create systemic socioeconomic change in their cities through this game and through this tournament. So I'm so excited. Please welcome. First, I'm gonna do kind of like a host city vibe here. So as I introduce each one, let's just, let's give them a round of applause for who they're repping. So the first one, representing Atlanta, which is where I just moved, so let's hear it for Atlanta, is the CEO of Soccer in the Streets, Kaseem Ladipo. Give him a round. Yeah, Kaseem. He's here. Next, representing the Bay. Do we have any Bay here? Bay Area? Specifically Oakland. Yeah, specifically Oakland. Please welcome Cody Pillon, co-founder of Oakland Genesis. Representing Miami, we have the lovely Director of Legacy for the Football World Cup 2026 Host City Committee, Jen Roche. And bringing it home, representing the hometown here, delighted to have Jimmy Kim, General Manager of Recreation and Parks, LA. Come on, it's LA, guys! All right, so we're truly represented around the country. We don't have all 11 cities here, but we certainly have an incredible group of representatives of those who are really making impact in their city. So I'm so excited to be here with you all today. Thank you for joining us. I'm gonna start, on home turf here because I'm smart. So I'm gonna go to Jimmy first. Obviously, Jimmy, you have done such an amazing job considering that the World Cup hasn't even happened, working in partnership with the LA Host Committee to truly look at how you're utilizing recreation and parks to bring the game to more people. There's this incredible approach that you've taken at the recreation, but then brought in club. Can you tell us a little bit about how that kind of came about and what the outcomes have been?
Yeah, I mean, I think in just soccer in general, for the city, we do an amazing job as it relates to recreational soccer. One of the challenges that we found was that as they get to a certain skill level or to a price point, it's not attainable for a lot of youth in Los Angeles. And so as we were looking forward now 2 years ago, as we were looking forward to the World Cup coming and with support from LA28, we said, how do we pilot a program that's government-led that builds a true pathway from recreation to competitive level sports? I think the speaker that was here before was talking about cost and that being the barrier. So as we were building out our program, it's called LA City United, LA City United Football Club, and we were really looking at three things. One, high quality, making sure it's a high quality program. Two, equity, right, and making sure we're really catering to our lowest social economic background communities. And third, affordability. So I will say in our program, which is truly a competitive level program, and I'm going to say this once and that's it, it's $10 a month for the program. And with that, yeah. And what that allows is it really gives that youth not only, affordability, but high quality. So they get their, home kit, away kit, training kit, they get their backpacks. We pay for their tournament once a month. We pay for their registration. So really subsidizing the program and allowing those talented players in Los Angeles a pathway, whether it be to collegiate soccer, whether it be to professional soccer, to be discovered, maybe an Olympian, but really just to get that, we want to move away all those barriers so that they have opportunity.
Yeah, and I just have to say that having worked with Jimmy over the last year and understanding really what that rec program has offered, there's a real desire, at least from us and many of the cities that we've been talking to take this model to other cities and other parks and rec departments, because it's just such a great model. Just, can you chat a little bit more? That rec piece is really important, but what's really unique and I think speaks to what we just heard, the story we just heard, was around how you're connecting that to the club level and the kind of elite pathway. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and again, I think it's very, it's an important component to understand that in club, in LA, there's a huge landscape, and there's a lot of financial profitability in competitive soccer.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
Yeah.
And so, again, I kind of use this as my North Star. When we started this 2 years ago, a family member came up to me and said, "Thank God for this program." And I was like, well, yeah, this is amazing. They were telling me that they had two players that are both competitive players. Without this program, they would have had to decide which of their sons was going to be participating in competitive soccer, right? And so we've been really building this program. We still have some challenges because, in competitive program, there's a lot of competition. We're transitioning kids from recreation into competition. And in recreation, it's everybody plays, right? But in competitive sports, it's not everybody plays. There's a level of learning skills, but also a level of winning, right? You do have to win so that you become recognized and you start getting that eye, the look on our program. So we're really looking at how do we develop that piece and making sure it's a solid curriculum and making sure that we're taking away all the outside factors, whether it be, I coach my own son, so he has to play on my team, or some clubs will charge the $2,000 to a player that's really going to sit on the bench, but they could afford it, but they need that revenue to support other elements of their program. So that is all taken out. So we're looking at other models, like we're working with U.S. Soccer now, but also we've talked to other nations and seeing, the soccer nations where everybody plays soccer. So like I said, we have 50,000 players in our recreation league alone, just in the city. That's a huge pull of kids. So I truly believe out of those 50,000 players, we should be able to pull out, because our program at all of our locations, we're going to have only 4 in the city. We could maximize about 2,000 players, but that'll be 2,000 of our top players from our recreation program.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, there's two things that I love about what Jimmy has said and what the Rec and Parks Department are doing. One is, you guys have probably heard about this sort of term, the soccer wars, which is really around, the pay-to-play model and what's happening around the soccer landscape. you really are shifting the pay-to-play model, which is something we've been talking about for 30 years, and this is truly a way to do that, and it's an amazing best practice. And then the other part around this is, and you probably heard Jimmy say it a few times, is just because it's affordable doesn't mean it's bad quality. Like, it's good. And that's a really big thing that we have to push when we're looking at these types of models. And I mean, every city is different in terms of the challenges that they're addressing and how they're addressing it. And Cody obviously put his hand up when we're talking about Parks and Rec, because you have had your own share of discussions with them. But what you're doing in Oakland is so incredibly innovative. When I heard about it, 18 months ago, literally my jaw dropped. It was just so cool. How are you kind of convening the different stakeholders in Oakland to truly reimagine soccer there?
Yeah, we have a really unique city in that, we're not a massive city, but we have a really passionate soccer playing population, but we clearly lack the infrastructure to keep expanding access to the game for those kids. To combat that, there's organizations like Oakland Genesis operating all throughout the city, doing amazing work. So we have this coalition, and shout out to the Oakland Sports Equity Coalition. I think they're in the back. Rob's here today. We have this great coalition of orgs doing the work, but right now we're seeing that we're lacking the infrastructure for us to expand what we're doing. So the project that we're working on right now, that you see my name up there, I'm representing 2 orgs, but the project we're launching right now is called Oakland United. Oakland United was born out of my work over the last 7 years with Oakland Genesis, and for quick context on that, that's essentially a college and career pathways program that masquerades as a competitive soccer club. So similar to what you're running, a completely free soccer club that has a real emphasis on academic support and academic success. So ultimately, the mission of that program is if you're in the academy, you're going to graduate high school with the academic eligibility to go follow your goals, and soccer is a tool for help kids get there. Right now, in that program, we serve 1,200 kids annually, which is a mark that a lot of other orgs in the city hit. Our success is proven in the outcomes. We have a 100% graduation rate. 80% of kids are qualifying for UCs. We have an average GPA of 3.3, but our limiting factor to date has been space. And we have talked with other organizations doing great work in the same schools and with the same population, Soccer Without Borders, America Scores, they're seeing those same issues. So what we're trying to do is build a coalition and represent a scope of impact that allows us to go to the city and say, hey, the outcomes they're happening right now, but we don't have the space to expand them. We need to increase access in this city, and our limiting factor is infrastructure. We have, of any cities in the Bay Area, Oakland has the least amount of quality, safe places to play, and that is not reflective of the player population that we have, right? So we're currently working with the city of Oakland to reimagine 2 city-owned spaces. They're full-size fields, to establish a new model for public-private partnership that will allow programs like Genesis and other great soccer and sports-based organizations doing the good work to expand their programming into those spaces to have a greater scope of impact in the city. What's really exciting about this moment now is that obviously leveraging the momentum of the upcoming World Cup has helped us all. The announcement from US Soccer Forward to authentically invest in Oakland as a city that they believe in has been a huge win in our sales, so that we can go to organizations like the city and the school district and say, we have community-based organizations doing the work here, and now we're backed by a national entity. Let's collaborate together to make sure that soccer in this city, is a term I've heard a lot today, is a public good and not a private asset, and that every kid who wants to play has a chance to access it.
Yeah, and what I love about what we've learned from Cody and his team from partnering locally is, like, what is US soccer's superpower? Like, what can we really bring to the table? Like, sure, we can bring investment, which we are, but what are we really going to help do? We are not a direct-to-service provider. There are organizations like all of you that are doing that, and for us, bringing that credibility meant that it opened government doors, city doors. I think it allowed you to raise $6 million. Like, all of these things, how can we kind of show up? That's really what we're trying to do, and Oakland has really allowed us to kind of think about that in real time. You talked a lot about this kind of the systems change and working private-public partnerships. I came across soccer in the streets about 15 years ago when I was working at Beyond Sport back in the day, and thought that the model was maybe like one of the most innovative I've ever seen. The work that you're doing across different entities is really unique. Can you share a little bit about how Station Soccer has evolved and the way that you work kind of systemically within Atlanta?
No, absolutely. So Soccer in the Streets has been around for 37 years. And I always tell people that really about maybe 10 or 12 years ago, Soccer in the Streets found a moment to be opportunistic around utilizing soccer as a true tool for community development. We were fortunate at the time to have someone who was considered a little bit crazy initially when he presented the idea of utilizing land historically not used at our transit agencies. And he saw that as an opportunity to transform a community where soccer would be at the center point of how communities convened and thought about how do you bring people together to improve not just youth development opportunities, but also how do you improve larger systemic issues that these communities faced. And so in 2016, we launched our first Station Soccer site, which was at the time connected to our MLS team launching its first year. So we were able to take advantage of the opportunity of the excitement and energy around soccer to get investment from not just the MLS team, but also from the public sector, City of Atlanta, as well as some of our other kind of key philanthropic partners to launch this site. Fast forward to today, we are about to open up our 7th site in a neighborhood that is traditionally underserved, traditionally marginalized. And we kind of look at the Station Soccer piece as no longer just about bringing access to young people who want safe and free spaces to play, but now we realize ultimately that this is a tool to actually really revitalize communities. And so we're super excited about what does it look like to continue to expand our network in underutilized communities. But the other part of it is how do we then use that as a node for plugging into other key kind of stakeholder groups that want soccer. So we're obviously super excited about the launch of the Soccer in Schools initiative that US Soccer has because we're also plugged into schools. And so while Station Soccer acts as kind of the hook for soccer, we have an opportunity to really build ecosystems in neighborhoods where soccer can be used in different nonprofits, in different schools, working with different other community partners to ensure that the sport is actually used as a platform to just transform communities.
And I think like connectivity is so important, especially for certain populations in cities, and Atlanta has like really showcased what that could mean. We were just talking about like the Beltline backstage, which has really revolutionized like how the city is connected and moves around. The MARTA train partnership, like how did that come about? I mean, how does an organization that thinks this is a cool idea even go around about something like that?
Yeah. Well, I think I heard some Atlanta folks in here. Can I get a shout out from my Atlanta folks again? Where are they?
They got the last plane home.
They're first to the bar, right? After this, just like my Atlanta people. Well, I was going to say there's a common phrase used called Atlanta influences everything. I always tell people that Atlanta is a city that's always at the cutting edge around innovative ways to build community. And at the time, no one would have thought that we would be able to bring a city, a transit agency, local nonprofits, citizens, different stakeholder groups to come together for a project that, quite frankly, had never been done before. And the reason why I think that was able to happen, first and foremost, was we had someone whose kids were already playing soccer, and Arthur Blank, the owner of the Falcons and the MLS team, the Atlanta United, who was deeply invested in utilizing his philanthropic influence to change community. And he had been doing it for 20 plus years, but largely through other initiatives, and saw soccer as a key lever to improve communities. Combine that with some key initiatives happening in Atlanta around place-based philanthropy, where philanthropists, if you're not familiar with it, philanthropists will come to the table and localize their community development efforts and create proof points for what could be replicated in other neighborhoods. And we were leading the charge in place-based philanthropy in neighborhoods across the metro region. Tie that also to a transit agency that was looking for ways to increase ridership and looking for ways to take advantage of land that had traditionally been underutilized. So all of these entities, in theory, would not work well together, but our city just, for a lot of different reasons, saw this as an opportunity, and we just took advantage of it. And I always talk about kind of soccer in the streets when we look at how do we take advantage of what's happening, and I think it's this intersection between community buy-in already being in place, because you can't just overlay initiatives on community. So we had the community, it had the credibility in the community. I think the other is opportunity. So we saw the opportunity, and we didn't just kind of, put it aside or worry about the risk. We just said, why don't we take a calculated risk on something that could be really meaningful? And then we already had infrastructure, and while station soccer did not exist already, we already had infrastructure in terms of we had philanthropic partners, we had people who were already doing work in communities, we had a strong reputation in the soccer space. We were already kind of well regarded in the, in the soccer for good community. And so all of those things kind of came together to actually create what station soccer became. And I think as we look at the future of soccer in Atlanta, those three elements, infrastructure already in place, community buy-in, willingness to take advantage of opportunities, are going to be the lenses that we look through as we go into the World Cup and beyond.
Yeah, the three key ingredients, Jen.
Three key ingredients.
Yeah.
Yes.
Speaking of those three ingredients, you've been on a journey in developing this legacy strategy for Miami. Can you share a little bit about the key areas that you're focusing on and some of the challenges and opportunities you've had in getting there?
Definitely. First of all, thankful to be here today and sharing the stage with all of you in this room with people who are so committed to community and change. But when I joined the host committee at the end of November 2024, we were actually onboarding a new president and CEO at the same time. So we were in chaos mode, to say the least, and I was kind of trying to come up with a plan and make sure that when the time came and when the resources were there, that I was prepared. So I spent a lot of my first 6 months kind of doing field research, a lot of listening, meeting with nonprofits, not only in the soccer space, but understanding that as our host committee, Miami, is mostly funded by government, soccer might not be their interest. So understanding how can we fit in nonprofits that focus on other aspects, but most importantly, with that underlying factor of creating a social impact and creating social change. So our strategy came together. We're focused on access to play, sustainability, and community engagement, and really building a huge Rolodex of partners that we're able to uplift, give this platform around World Cup, and let them shine, because when the host committee closes its doors at the end of 2026, really making sure that we've connected all these people in the community that are doing such great work, and then they can kind of continue on the journey. So in March, we launched our One Game, One Future, which is our legacy platform. Over the next 2 months or 71 days till World Cup, we'll be delivering 15 community events, which comprise of a coach's education workshop, free to not only soccer coaches, but people in the sports space, recreation leaders, the Boys and Girls Clubs, the YMCAs, and we have a network of trained coaches that will be delivering this Sport for Development workshop and kind of giving them these tools on how they can develop sessions for their kids, whether they're in soccer or not. We follow that with a free youth soccer clinic and then donating all the equipment at each stage so all these organizations can take it back and kind of continue on their journey. Also then adding in health screenings, just because we really want to do a push and making sure we're giving access to those underserved communities, those that can't play in the clubs or afford to play in those pay-for-play systems. So creating these little moments to then kind of engage community, create that buy-in, and kind of have this entryway and this first entryway into the sport.
Just that. You've been busy, but you know what you're doing. You've been around the block. You've been at CONCACAF. You've seen a lot of what this can do and what major tournaments can do. What do you kind of think is possible now that you've sort of wrapped your head around your action plan? What do you kind of see in 5 years as ideally the legacy of this World Cup and the work that you're doing?
My new favorite phrase is "to the moon," because I just feel like what I learned at CONCACAF, that was my first time working in soccer and truly understanding the soccer landscape. And from 2020 through 2025, just learning so much about the game and so much about the opportunity. And when I worked on CONCACAF, had a relationship with Generation Amazing, which led the legacy work for Qatar. So we delivered a legacy program in partnership with them, but in the CONCACAF region, so North Central America in the Caribbean. It was a very intense project, and by the time I left, we got to 21 of our 41 member associations, and really shifting then from that lens where I was in a football organization and kind of around football experts and taking that, and then from the host committee side, going into a space where people aren't speaking soccer and kind of understanding and really educating them about all the work that's being done, all the possibilities and all the resources that are out there for them to tap into.
That's awesome. I think what we've heard from all four of you is really how different the sport and the opportunity of this summer really can manifest itself, but really the kind of similarity here is collective partnerships across all systems in the city. And we heard from Renata this morning where there was a real call to action around how this room can really take action around systemic change. And so I think, you know, I'm gonna ask each of you this. As you all know, we launched today at US Soccer, Soccer Forward's local approach and our commitment, which is the Soccer Forward community model. And that will entail investing in communities across the country with a minimum of $500,000, as well as support around places to play, coaching, and programming around schools and communities. And that's our commitment to cities and communities across this country, and enabling and ensuring a true local approach. I'm curious from you all in terms of what kind of support and what do you see as needed from each of your cities and each of your communities in terms of systemic support and change. What do you really need to really make that long-term impact happen? Jimmy, I'll start with you. And this is for all of you. Take home.
You know, I think from a specifically like soccer perspective, you know, I think affordability is key, but you can't be affordable and not have, you can have a lot of kids, but if you don't have the appropriate trained up coaches, right? And I think, at least from our system, a lot of our coaches are either, parent coaches. There's not a lot of training behind it. It's not very standard. And so I think coming out of like our last 2 years, one of the things that we're trying to do is really develop a standard training program that's across all of our parks. We have 123 rec centers within our system. And at each of those sites, you have over 20, 30 coaches, right? So you're talking about over 2,000, 3,000 coaches. How amazing would it be if you have a standardized coaching curriculum in soccer across all of those, and then feed that curriculum up into our competitive level, where the kids that are learning from these coaches are learning the fundamentals and the skills that they need to build that pathway. So I think for us, what I would like to see, our next step is really looking at it from holistically across our entire system. Like, how do we make sure that we have a standardized curriculum, that it's across all of our coaches, from your recreational league all the way up to our competitive league. So there's truly a pathway that gets to that.
A standardized coaching curriculum for soccer, like where would you get that? That's awesome.
I think I know somebody.
Awesome. Jen?
I think one, kind of going into the education piece, I think education across the board and just kind of pushing the needle slowly and never giving up. I think that community work and sustainability is just such a slow burn, and just one step in front of the other kind of each and every day. And so for me, being in this role now and kind of meeting people that I met in 2020 that I've met with, and I'm like, oh, that's amazing. I thought it was amazing in 2020. And then now, 6 years later, finally being able to work with them or get something across the line. I think it's just about putting one step in front of the other and not taking no for an answer. It's just maybe not right now.
Long-term resilience. Yeah.
I'm going to work backwards a little bit on this answer, but I think the long-term goal is for systems change is to have the city of Oakland recognize that they need to budget specifically for access to youth sports, because not only does it benefit youth, but it benefits the health and wellness of the entire city. But in order to get there, I think we need a proof of concept for them, and that is Oakland United's goal. It starts with soccer in schools, making sure that every school has access to a quality, free, accessible soccer program, elementary all the way through high school. That also, to get there, that involves the element of coaching education and coaching programming, which Soccer Forward can help with, which is awesome. The next piece is infrastructure. So making sure that those kids have the paces that they want to play, that are safe, accessible, and stewarded by organizations that are demanding that the folks that are going to access that for programming are doing so with programming that incentivizes the holistic results that we've been all talking about today, and not wins and losses and false scholarship dreams.
Yeah.
If we're able to do that, and we can convince the city that this is the public benefit that they need to invest long-term in, that's when we'll have systemic change. And that's why I'm thinking this incredible World Cup window, not only between this year, but also 2031, where we have this 5-year window to really go for it and do some incredible work, improve not only in Oakland, but across the country, that this needs to happen, and we piloted it for soccer, and it's working, and now we need to think about it for all sports. That's why I think this is the moment to do it.
Yeah, proof of concept. I also think that the work that Play Equity Fund have been doing at the state level around policy has really helped lead the way there, which is really exciting.
Lex, they took all the good answers. No.
What happened to Atlanta leads?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I said that earlier, and now I'm walking my words back. Echoing the long view, if you break it down, I think it comes down to, are you willing to partner with us truly, or is this just a one-off endeavor? We're looking for minimum 5-year relationships with any stakeholder who wants to be a part of this. And that's financial investment, that's human capital investment, that's institutional investment, because we're all going to learn together. And we don't have all the answers, nor do our partners, and so we're going to sit and figure it out together. From a nonprofit perspective, we need that because we're already stretched. And so if we're constantly having to reset relationships, it's going to be really hard for us to sustain the work that we're trying to do. What I would also say is we need to make sure that we stay aligned with what the community actually needs, because oftentimes we decide what we're going to do, and then we tell the community that, and then we get mad when the community doesn't want it. So what I love about my friend Lex here is that she's leading the charge of making sure that we always stay attuned to community, even as we're building these long views on what's possible. Because ultimately the end game is about better lives through the utilization of sport. And that may look different in Oakland versus LA versus Miami versus Atlanta. it may actually look different by neighborhoods. And so being willing to just be in the work together for a long period of time and learn together, that's when you begin to develop those proof of concepts. That's when you're able to see where the nuances are that ultimately lead towards being able to consistently deliver to communities for years to come.
Yeah. And what I've always learned, and I always echo this because Renata always says it, and I always kind of, it really resonates with me where she's like, communities know what they need. We don't need to tell them what they need. You know, following them is real kind of support, and I love that, and I've lived by that in my career. I think to recap, in terms of systems change at a city level where you feel the resources are needed, standardized education tools and resources, long-term commitment and long-term buy-in and resilience, and policy buy-in and proof of concept. I feel like those are keys to systems change from experts here, and things that all of us in this room can probably commit to in one way or another. So appreciate that insight and that call to action. I know we're at time, but I want to end with a very, very fast go down the line, because we can't leave here with all of these World Cup host cities being represented without sharing one very brief line of what you're most excited for this summer in your city for the World Cup coming. Jimmy? That's not fast.
There's so much. There's so much. Wow. I will say what I'm most excited about is really showcasing, you know, to not only the community, but even to the world as they come into LA, is showcasing what LA City United is as a pilot and what it can be as far as like accessibility. And so I think, again, like we're really proud, you know, we're very different from other government agencies because it's our program, to that point about being a pilot. Like we're doing that pilot, so happy to share our, you know, lessons learned. But one beauty that I have is that, you know, I oversee all of that. So if we say we're gonna standardize a program, I could standardize it all across, from recreation all the way up into our competitive sports, across all 123 rec centers, right? So I want to be able to showcase that and say, hey, this can actually work, right? And we should replicate this in other parts of our cities, other government agencies, because it really provides access to youth that need it the most.
Yeah. Jen, quick hitter.
I'm super excited to introduce a bunch of young kids to soccer and have them go home with a soccer ball and have their uniform, and also excited to bring my parents to their first World Cup match. They're in their 70s and have never really, my dad I don't think has ever been to a professional soccer game, so super excited for that.
Miami's gonna be ace for that.
Yes.
Cody?
I think being in a World Cup hosting city or area like the Bay is an undeniably inspiring and motivating and just special experience no matter what your age is. And for a lot of kids that we work with, they've never experienced this before. So just seeing their before and after this moment passes their city and what that's inspired in them and what they might want to do now that they've experienced it is what I'm most excited about.
Having 150 of our kids able to walk out with the teams for every World Cup game, that is going to transform our organization and the lives of kids in ways we will never be able to quantify.
That will be a game changer. Well, I can say with very, very much confidence that, you know, Brazil, South Africa, Qatar, the real impact of that month and what this will be 6 weeks is insurmountable. It's unexpected. You will not know what the impact can be until it's actually happening. But I can also say with confidence that given the work that you are all doing, that we're trying to do collectively, that the opportunity for beyond this summer is immense, and getting accessibility and inclusivity of this game to everyone, everywhere across this country really can happen because of what the opportunity is around this World Cup. So we thank you for all of your efforts, but really thank everyone here for the ongoing and long-term commitment of leveraging what this summer can be and what beyond it can be. So thank you so much.
Thanks.